Good morning. Thank you all for being here. As you know, we usually refer to these gatherings as Abney Power Breakfasts. It's now almost 11:15, so welcome to Abney's first ever Power Brunch. Since many of you have actually asked the same question, I should say, please do not ask your server for bottomless mimosas. They will not be coming today. It is our pleasure this morning and our honor to be joined once again by Governor Andrew Cuomo. But before I turn the stage over to the governor and to MTA Chairman Joe Lhota, I want to take a moment to recognize and thank the other public servants who are here with us today. And I'd ask you please hold your applause until I'm done, as the list is extensive. Former Mayor David Dinkins, former Abney Chairman and current Chair of REBNY, Bill Rudin, who are sitting on either side of my dad, who is one of the founders of Abney, Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul, Congress members Jerry Nadler and Adriano Espaillat, from the Governor's Administration, Melissa DeRosa, Secretary to the Governor, Alfonso David, Counsel to the Governor, Robert Mojica, Budget Director, Kelly Cummings, Deputy Chief of Staff and Senior Advisor, Lindsay Boylan, Deputy Secretary for Economic Development, and Peter Kiernan, Special Counselor to the Governor for Infrastructure Initiatives. Commissioners who are here are Port Authority Executive Director Rick Cotton, and the Commissioner for New York State Housing and Community Renewal, Ruth Ann Wisniewskis. From the MTA, we have the Chairman Joe Lhota, New York City Transit Authority President Andy Boyd, President Pat Foy, Managing Director Ronnie Haken, Chief Development Officer Jana Lieber, Chief Operating Officer Phil Ang, John Weinstein, Director of Communications, as well as other MTA board members. From the Assembly, we have Joe Lenthal, Louis Sepulveda, and David Weprin. Manhattan District Attorney Cy Vance is here, Council members Rafael Espinal, Peter Koo, Mark Levine, Carolina Rivera, Ydanis Rodriguez, Richie Torres, Kalman Yeager, and former City Council Speaker Chris Quinn. Former Public Advocate Betsy Gottbaum is here today, and we have labor leaders including John Samuelson, President of TW International, Mario Salento, President of the New York State AFL-CIO, Vinny Alvarez, President of the New York City Central Labor Council, Gary LaBarbera, President of the New York City Building and Construction Trades Council, as well as many other labor leaders. If I've missed anybody, my apologies. Thank you all for being here. If you're in this room today, you already know a fair amount about Governor Cuomo and his accomplishments. They are many, but I want to call out a few. On two defining issues of our time, marriage equality and gun control, he not just led our state, he led our nation. While others are content to talk about infrastructure, Governor Cuomo has made major infrastructure projects a reality across New York State. He raised the minimum wage to $15 an hour. He has moved to protect middle-class New Yorkers from the new federal tax code and the loss of state and local tax deductibility. And this budget, passed last week, was his 8th consecutive timely budget. The first time a New York governor has done that since Governor Thomas Dewey in the 1950s. Our governor is not afraid. And at a moment when our city and state are getting knocked around in DC, we have a governor who, make no mistake, can stand up, speak up, and not back down. I know all of you are very excited to hear about our subways and transit system. For many of us at Abney, we've been around long enough to remember a time when the subway crisis was that nobody actually wanted to ride it. I'll leave it to the governor to talk about how he brought new leadership team to the MTA and how he just got the legislature to create a new revenue stream for mass transit, something that has been attempted before but not achieved. Governor, we at Abney are grateful that you come here to share news and talk about our city and state. We look forward to working with you on transit issues and many other things. We are a group of dedicated New Yorkers from the business, civic, labor, and not-for-profit worlds. We are all in for New York, and we appreciate hearing from you on matters that affect our city and state. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the 56th Governor of New York, the Honorable Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. How cool is this? Brunch at Cinderella. My first. First to Mr. Stephen Rubenstein. I know your father. He's a great guy. I don't know if anyone has ever said that to you before, but get used to it, because I have heard it all my life, Stephen. Let's give Stephen Rubenstein a big round of applause. To Mr. Bill Rudin, who's shown leadership for many, many years. He's now Chairman Emeritus, which means he no longer has to wear a tie. Let's give Bill a round of applause. Joseph Loda, who thought that he had freed himself from the bondage of public service and he was finally in the private sector. We called him up and we tugged on his heartstrings and some other parts of his anatomy, and he came back to help us when we desperately needed help at the MTA, and he's doing a great job. Joe Loda. And we also have the whole MTA team, our new head, Andy Byford, who's here, and we're very excited to be with him, and Phil Lang, and Charlie Hall, and Ronnie. Let's give them a round of applause. We just finished the state budget, which is always a pleasure, but it's really, they call it a budget, but it's more than a budget. It's the action plan for the state for the entire year. And I want to go through that quickly with you and then segue to the MTA, and then Chairman Loda will take you through the specifics on the MTA plan. It was our 2019 budget. It was probably the hardest budget that we've done. We started with a major deficit, $4.4 billion. You had to find 4.4 just to get back to zero. And we have a hostile federal government. I mean that politically, and I mean it economically. The overall budget is $168 billion. The two big spending items on the state side are education funding and Medicaid funding. And everything else basically was held flat to make up for the deficit. The New York State has suffered for many years by the perception that we're a high-tax state, an anti-business state. The problem is it's not just a perception issue, it's a reality issue. This state is a high-tax state. Why are the taxes high? Because we spend a lot of money. It's not a complicated equation. Doctor, why am I putting on weight? Because you are consuming too many calories. It's a simple equation. And this state spent a lot of money for 50 years. And it adds up. It started with Nelson Rockefeller, who did great things, but spent a lot of money. His annual spending rate was 11% year to year. He was governor for 16 years. Followed by Hugh Carey. His annual spending rate was 7.9%. He was governor for 8 years. My father, God rest his soul, 12 years, 6.9%. George Pataki, Republican conservative, 12 years, 5.2%. All along, for that period of time, the inflation rate was 4%. So literally, we're spending more than inflation. and taxpayers felt that we were putting our hand deeper and deeper into their pocket. That's because we were. We came in with a mandate to reverse that and to get the spending down so we could get taxes down. Over now 8 budgets, our spending is 1.4% per year compared to the past spending rates. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can that be? You're a Democrat. You Democrats spend a lot of money. It can't be right. It's not a kind thought that just went through your mind, a little stereotypical, a little judgmental, but we don't really have an alternative. You have to reduce the rate of spending. It doesn't mean we're doing less. We're doing more than we've ever done before. But it means that you can find better ways to spend money and more efficient ways to do it. One of the main obstacles for this budget was handling the federal tax reform policy that passed. Federal tax reform policy reduced taxes in 38 states. And then in 12 states, there was an additional surcharge, if you will. The surcharge was they eliminated the deductibility of the state income and property taxes, okay? New York is one of the 12 where they eliminate the deductibility of your state income and property taxes. Property taxes in New York City on the commercial side are a problem. On the residential side are not that burdensome. You're in Nassau, Suffolk, you're in Westchester, you're paying the highest absolute property taxes in the United States of America. You're in upstate New York, you're paying the highest property taxes in the country as a percentage of home value. When you eliminate the deductibility of property taxes, they go up roughly 30%. You eliminate the deductibility of your income tax, it goes up roughly 30%. Just those 12 states. Now, we're at a competitive disadvantage for the other 38 states. So we needed to find a way to reduce that burden. And what we did is we came up with an option for employers. And we flipped the tax code from an income tax-based code to a payroll tax-based code. So an employer has the option of paying a payroll tax on the salary they pay, which is still fully deductible, rather than the employee paying an income tax. To defray the cost of the property tax increase, we set up charitable entities. So rather than paying a property tax, you can pay a charitable contribution, which is still tax deductible. We also passed a very aggressive women's agenda in the middle of all the Me Too movement and the Time's Out movement and all these revelations about sexual harassment against women and the culture of sexual harassment against women. Washington has done absolutely nothing. New York is the first state in the nation to pass an anti-sexual harassment policy against women. And we are proud of it. What it says to government officials is if you are a perpetrator of sexual harassment, the government is not going to pay the bill. You're going to pay the bill. It is a model anti-sexual harassment code that is binding on every government in the state of New York, not just state government, literally counties, towns, villages. It prohibits non-disclosure agreements unless the victim's name is redacted. So I think it's going to be another national precedent, and I think you'll see other states starting to follow it. It also extends what's called forensic rape kits. We have this whole great DNA database now, where there's a murder committed and you can go back and check the DNA database. But when it came to rape, we were only keeping the data for 30 days, believe it or not. We extended that to now 20 years because women deserve the same protection that everybody else does. And there was a recent issue of police officers having sex with someone who was in custody, and they said it was consensual sex. We passed a law that says there's no such thing as consensual sex when you are in custody. We also, after Florida, we hoped Washington would actually take action on guns. They haven't. We passed another provision in New York, which is protection for victims of domestic violence. Half of the women who are murdered in this country are murdered by an intimate partner. Over 4.5 million women in this country have been threatened with a gun. What this says is if a person is arrested for a domestic violence-related offense, on arraignment, the judge can take the guns from the individual because we know it's a dangerous situation and it has to stop. Also remember, we passed after Sandy Hook, which was the massacre in Connecticut with school children. We passed something called the SAFE Act, which is the strongest, most sensible gun safety law in the United States of America. We did it 5 years ago. It does everything that they are now talking about in Washington. It bans assault weapons, no more than 10 bullets in a magazine. It closes the gun show loophole. It requires the re-registration of handguns. And it created a mental health database where if you are mentally ill, there's a database that prohibits you from buying a gun. 5 years, there are 77,000 people on that mental health database who could have bought a gun but for the SAFE law. We passed that act. It's the exact bill they're trying to get passed in Washington, but they're afraid to pass. And 5 years later, the world has not stopped spinning. Hunters are hunting. Legitimate people who want to own a gun can own a gun. Life goes on. I don't understand the fear in Washington that they're going to offend the NRA, God forbid. But meanwhile, they're going to continue us down this course of massacre after massacre after massacre, losing all these innocent lives because they're afraid of the political backlash. Life goes on. Look at New York. We passed the strongest gun law in the nation. We didn't infringe on the Second Amendment rights of anyone who deserved the Second Amendment rights. And we have the best gun law in the nation. And I think Washington should take a look at that and show some political courage and step up to the plate. There's another national issue that Washington's doing nothing about, which is we know that Russia was interfering with our elections. We know that now. We know that they were hacking, they were using phony sites. We know we have an election coming up in November. And we know that Washington has done absolutely nothing. All the political advertising, most of the political advertising is now moving to social media. There's no disclosure on social media. When you take a TV ad, it has that annoying line on the bottom that says paid for by the radio ad says paid for, newspaper says paid for by, but social media, there's no disclosure. It's anonymous. So you don't know who's paying for it. You don't know if it's from Russia or where it's from. We passed a law that says social media, you have to disclose, and the internet companies have to know that that is a legal entity to be making an investment in political advertising, that if they're getting paid in rubles, a bell should go off. We're the first state in the nation to pass it. I think it's going to be another precedent. We have education funding transparency that I think is going to take us to the next level. We spend more money per pupil in this state than any state in the United States. We pay double the national average, which I'm proud of. But what I'm not proud of is some pupils receive $11,000 per year for their education. Some pupils receive $33,000 a year for their education, all in public school, $11,000 to $33,000. That's not fair. And it's by zip code, and it's often by minority status and the poverty level of your neighborhood. I said, let's have all 4,000 schools in the state of New York, and let's disclose how much money per pupil is going to all 4,000 schools, so we use the state money to equalize that disparity from the property tax system, so we educate all our children. It's 64 years after Brown versus Board of Ed, 50-year anniversary of Martin Luther King. We still have 2 education systems. Let's end it, and let's end it in the state of New York. The Eisenhower built the highway system because his premise was you need to get there and you need to be able to drive. The new internet is the new economic grid. We will be the first state in the United States to have 100% broadband for everyone in every part of the state, in every community, and we're going to have it next year. What happened in Puerto Rico was terrible. It wasn't terrible that they had the storm, Hurricane Maria. What was terrible was the lack of responsiveness by this nation. When I was in the federal government, I was Secretary of HUD, I did the emergency response. Not only did we respond domestically, I was sent to respond for emergencies in the Dominican Republic and Haiti and in Ecuador. And I tell you, we did more for foreign countries than we did for the people of Puerto Rico. It's a sin how we left them on their own. New York has been very supportive. We're going to continue to be supportive. And we're starting a reconstruction program where we're going to send our SUNY and CUNY students down, working with labor organizations and real estate companies to actually do a home-by-home rebuilding and light infrastructure. Because if Puerto Rico doesn't come back soon, I think that island is going to have a different trajectory. We have more Puerto Ricans in New York than any other state, than any other place off the island of Puerto Rico. They're our brothers and sisters, and I want to step up for them in a big way, and I want to do it together. We invest in education, an additional $1 billion, total $26 billion investment, and $50 million more for community schools, which are the poorest schools in the state. $7.6 billion for higher ed, which has been a 25% increase since 2012, and a program I'm very excited about called Excelsior Scholarships that provides free college tuition to a state school for families earning up to $110,000. Now you can say, well, that's high, $110,000. If you're sending 2 children to a state school, it can cost about $30,000 a year per student. 2 students at $60,000, $110,000 doesn't sound like that much. I want to get to the point where we have free college in this state the way we went to free high school 60 years ago. The middle class are the ones who are struggling. The middle class are the ones who are angry economically. We've reduced middle class taxes to the lowest level in history. We're going to do it again, dropping the rate to 5.5 up to $150,000 and to 6% up to $300,000. And I feel good about that because they do need help, and I want them to know that this state is responding to their need. Rebuilding New York City, there's been a lack of development initiative, which is a national phenomenon. You fly into any airport anywhere on this globe, you look at what they have, and then you fly and you land at LaGuardia, and you wonder, what happened to us? Where did we go wrong? And in many ways, this nation has lost its mojo when it comes to construction. We were the bold, we were the ambitious, we were the first. but no more. Federal government promised $1 trillion infrastructure program. They spent it on a tax cut instead. But that was the right direction. And when President Trump first talked about it, I said, I support that. But it didn't happen, and we needed it desperately, not just for the economy, but infrastructure and transportation provide jobs for working men and women who don't have high-tech skills. You know, all this talk about, well, we'll bring back advanced manufacturing, we'll bring our economy is in the high-tech space. You have a whole workforce that doesn't have those high-tech skills. You bring in an advanced manufacturing company, they're not going to hire a 55-year-old, 60-year-old person. They're still hiring high-tech, youthful people who are facile with computers. We brought a big General Motors engine building plant to Buffalo. And I said, this is great. This is going to be real blue-collar jobs. Engine building. You know what you can't find in the factory? There's no wrench. Everything is all computerized. And every 20 feet, there's a 27-year-old at a computer who's programming the robotics. Infrastructure transportation still employs a significant sector in this economy that needs jobs. We're spending $100 billion in our building plan. It's the largest amount in the history of the state of New York. $100 billion. President Trump's plan for the entire country is $200 billion for the nation. We're spending $100 billion right here in New York, and I'm proud of it. Starting with the Long Island Railroad. In the metropolitan area, the Long Island Railroad was chartered in 1834. Why did they build the railroad? Because it was a link to a ferry that you would catch at Montauk. That's why they built the Long Island Railroad. It's basically been unchanged ever since. We just announced a $6 billion restoration for the Long Island Railroad. It's 100 projects. It's 2 new tracks. You know, when you hear on the radio in the morning there's a delay on the Long Island Railroad, there's something on the track, they mean there is something on the track, because there is one track. A squirrel dies, everybody's late for work. This adds redundancy. You have a second track, you have a third track. We're building more parking lots, more stations, etc. We're building a new state-of-the-art airport at LaGuardia. Construction started, thank you, Chris. Construction started in June 2016. The first gates will open this fall, and 2021, the entire project will be completed. It's design build, it's done by the private sector in partnership with government, but it is going to be state-of-the-art, and it's going to happen fast. JFK, we're planning a $10 billion global air hub because these are the gateways to our state. Kosciuszko Bridge started in 2014, was supposed to finish in 2024. We revised the contract to go to a full design build. We saved 5 years. The Kosciuszko is now going to open next year. First bridge built since the Verrazano in New York City, believe it or not. The Javits Convention Center, when it was built in the 80s, my father opened it. It was state-of-the-art. The art form has moved on. It's not as competitive as it was because the convention centers have gotten larger. We are now going to double the size of Javits. It's underway now. We're adding 1.5 million square feet. And it's going to be right next door to Hudson Yards. It's going to be as competitive as any convention center in the United States. It'll be another economic engine, and we're going to get that done in just 4 years. It's underway now, so I'm excited about that. After 20 years of talking about the Moynihan Train Hall at Penn Farley, it is now under construction, and it will be opened in 2020. We'll already opened the new LIRR concourse, which is in Penn Farley and gives you a totally different feeling than Penn Station does. We put in cashless tolling, which is operational at all TBTA bridges and tunnels. It's not just faster, it saves a tremendous amount of time for commuters. It's also more secure because it checks the license plates, and people coming in and out of the city in this new age of terrorism with a watch list. It is just a phenomenal security device. We got it done in 10 months, 3 months ahead of schedule, believe it or not. And it's working, and it's working well. Tappan Zee Bridge, they talked about replacing for 20 years. It goes across the Hudson River. It is a $5 billion project. It is the largest infrastructure project in the United States of America. President Obama put a picture of it on the cover of the federal budget. It started in 2013. It's going to be finished this year under design build. It is beautiful. The legislature named it for my father. I suggested it. My mother made me. But it really is going to be a phenomenal achievement, and it's something that I'm proud of. NYCHA is something we have to attend to in the city. NYCHA is the New York City Housing Authority. I was the former HUD secretary. I've looked at public housing all across this country. I've been in the Chicago Housing Authority, New Orleans. I've been on Native American reservations. The NYCHA housing is as bad as anything I have seen. It is disgusting. There's been lack of heat, there's mold, there's vermin, there's still lead paint in NYCHA housing. Lead paint is something that we handled in the 70s because lead paint poisoning is irreversible for a child. We still have lead paint problems in NYCHA housing. The Department of Justice is investigating. HUD just came back in and took control of the federal funds. What the state did is we pledged $550 million to clean it up, largest amount in state history. And I appointed an independent emergency manager to come in, take over control, and build it, design build, and get it done fast, because we are better than this. We are better than this. Rikers Island is the same thing. Rikers Island is the worst jail in the state. More assaults, more murders, more assaults on staff. It's not even close. Federal government came in, said it's a civil rights abuse, and it should be closed. Our response was, okay, we'll build a new jail. It takes us 10 years to build a new jail. It can't take 10 years to build a new jail. You can build a new airport in 5 years, but it's going to take you 10 years to build a new jail. There's nothing especially complicated about a jail. It's bricks, it's bars, we know how to do that. To say people have to stay on Rikers Island for another 10 years would put another 100,000 young people through Rikers Island. We're not going to do that. State passed a law, we'll use design, build, construction, but the state is going to order an expediting vehicle to close Rikers Island, build a new jail, and we're not waiting 10 years to treat people like human beings. The BQE is a possible traffic nightmare. It has to be rebuilt. There are plans on how to do it, which have the rerouting of traffic through downtown Brooklyn. Luckily, I'm from Queens. But if this is not done right, this could be a real problem. And the state passed a law allowing design build, which will accelerate the construction. But this has to be carefully planned because it could really be a problem for traffic in the city if it's not done well. We passed design build legislation for NYCHA, the BQE, and Rikers. It saves time and it saves money for the city. We're also doing a Penn redesign, Pennsylvania Station. We're doing Farley, Moynihan. As we can move into Farley, Moynihan, we can get Amtrak out of Penn Station. and then we can start to redo Penn. It's not just a disgrace, Pennsylvania Station. I call it the 7 levels of hell. Amtrak doesn't like when I say that because they own it, but then they should fix it and I won't say it. Not only is it a terrible welcoming spot for New York, more people go through Penn Station per year than LaGuardia, Kennedy, and Newark airports combined, believe it or not, over 600,000 people. It's also now a public safety risk because there are so many people in such a tight area, it's all over Madison Square Garden, that God forbid there was a terrorist attack in that situation, we would have a problem. So we are accelerating through the Empire State Development Corporation ways to redevelop Penn, open it up, more access, more egress, and a better place for people to come through New York. We're finally going to have a train to the plane, and we're going to have the final approval to have a train to LaGuardia, which connects with the Long Island Railroad and can take you into Manhattan. We're one of the last cities to actually have a train to the plane. It's long overdue, but the legislature's getting it done this month. So that's good news. And we also are going to finish the Hudson River Park, which was a beautiful idea. Mayor Dinkins, who is here today, it was his brainchild with another gentleman named Mario Cuomo. Thank you for the gift of the Hudson River Park. The gift we are going to give you, Mr. Mayor, is we're going to finish it. It was supposed to be finished in 2003. There were a few, what's a nice way to say it, minor disruptions among some developers. We've resolved those now. We have a final plan. It requires an additional $100 million. The state budget passed, has 50 from the state, and mandates that the city pays $50 million. So we'll finish the Hudson River Park. We'll cut a ribbon on that one, Mr. Mayor, and you deserve it. We have a $20 billion affordable housing plan and homeless supportive housing plan. The street homeless population is on the increase in New York. You can feel it. You can see it. It's a problem for tourism. It's a problem for the economy. Most of all, it's a problem for the people who are homeless. We are going to mandate, before we give money to any local government, we want a comprehensive plan that gets people off the street and gets them the help they need. And that's going to start with New York City, because it's only getting worse and it hurts everyone. We're also building airports upstate New York, so you don't think everything is just New York City. Rochester, Syracuse, Plattsburgh, and Elmira. I urge you all to visit them often. And we have a full comprehensive building program all across the state. On the subways, before I turn it over to Joe, remember the New York City subway system, it's the largest and most complex in the world. We now have fully funded the short-term action plan. The state pledged 50% of the funding as soon as it was announced by Chairman Loda last year. The city refused to fund half the plan. We lost 8 months before the plan could become fully operational, which was a terrible loss and waste of time. In the state budget, it mandates that the city pays half of the subway action plan. So now we have full funding for that emergency action plan, which is about $869 million. It's a short-term, intensive repair program to reduce the delays. And it has been doing that, and now that it's fully funded, it can really do that. I also want us to start to think about a long-term modernization plan. Subway action plan, short-term, intense, fix the problems. Long-term, we need a full modernization plan. And what's really happened with the MTA is not just that we have failed on maintenance and deferred maintenance, et cetera, which is always the first thing to go in the budget. You know, they look at that line, maintenance, and they say, well, just scratch that out. You don't have to do that. And now the chickens are coming home to roost. But the other phenomenon that has happened is the number of users of the subway system has skyrocketed. Now, that is a good thing. It goes to the vibrancy of the city, but we had an increase in volume, and frankly, the system now has no way to handle the additional volume. Why? You can't run more cars on a train because, as John Samuelson will tell you the way he's told me many times, it won't fit in the existing subway platform. So you can't add more cars. You can't really expand the platforms at this point. It would take too long. The only feasible option is to increase the frequency of trains that you run. That then is monitored by the quote-unquote famous signal system, which is a signal system that must be 50, 60 years old. And you need a new signal system, the next generation of signal system, to run trains closer together. The initial thought was you have to wire the subway system. The subway system is 840 miles of track. The original time estimate to wire the subway system was 40 years. 40 years is a problem because I will be dead in 40 years. 40 years is also just an absurd amount of time. We had a genius competition where we competed with the best ideas all across the globe and offered $1 million prize. We actually have an idea that is exciting that says you don't have to wire the subway. You can use transponders on the cars and on the tracks, and you can monitor it that way. It would be all wireless. We're now in the proof of concept phase. So far, so good. It could be as fast as 8 years to install this system. And Andy Byford is the right man for the job, and he joined the MTA team. I don't want to tell him yet, but I don't accept 8 years either, by the way. I don't want to say that to Andy because he just started, and I'm afraid he'll run back to Toronto. But this is an exciting development of a new type of technology that could actually increase the frequency, and that's what we're going to have to do. So the Subway Action Plan is a start. $836 million it's secured. We also started congestion pricing with the first phase, which is a surcharge on the for-hire vehicles below 96th Street. That raises an additional $400 million a year. Between the 800 and the 400, we can fund that short-term subway action plan, but we have to start thinking long-term, because to put in a new system and new signals and new cars and make up for the 50, 60 years that we have ignored this system is going to take a significant investment. Where does the money come from? There's only 3 options in life. You can raise fares and tolls. You can expand congestion pricing, but that would probably take you about 3 years if you expedited it, or government is going to have to ante up and put more money in the pot, which is the simplest and cleanest option. Last year on the capital plan, New York State put in $8 billion, New York City put in $2.5 billion. We're about to work on the next capital plan. I think New York City and the City Council and the state legislature are being short-sighted if they don't invest in MTA's future. It is the lifeblood of the city. It is how the city moves. It drives the economy. It is cutting your nose to spite your face. We just lost 8 months because the city wouldn't pay half of the subway action plan. It is nonsensical. Nonsensical. We need to get people out of cars, congestion pricing. You have to be able to say to them that you have a mass transit system that works. You can't expect people to get out of their car if they're going to get into a train that never leaves the platform. You need to make the MTA work, and we have to do it without the delay and without the animus that we've had so far. We have to decide to do it, and we will. Aristotle's formula for success, two steps. Decide what you want to do and do it. And that's where we are. New Yorkers get it. They're done with the train delays and the excuses and the politics and the finger pointing. They want it fixed. They know how important and how vital it is. And it is the essence of what made New York, New York in the first place. The reason why I wanted to show you that, with how the Long Island Railroad started in 1834, look at the guts, look at the daring, look at the drive. We're going to build a railroad all the way to Montauk so you can catch a ferry to Boston. That was the only point. 127 miles of rail to get to a ferry to go to Boston. Why didn't you just tell the ferry, you're floating, you're moving, you come here, instead of me going all the way out to Montauk? Because they thought they could save time. And that little variance of time is why they built the subway. That's our energy. That's our creativity. Empire State Building, you can't build that high, just watch us. Verrazano Bridge, you can't build that long, just watch us. Holland Tunnel, you can't build a tunnel that far because you can't aspirate it, just watch us. George Washington Bridge, it's too long, just watch us. That is our DNA. Look at us, we are a built environment on one little piece of rock. We did what people said couldn't be done, and we did it over, and we did it over, and we did it over. We're doing it again. Go look at LaGuardia, go look at JFK, go look at the Mario Cuomo Bridge, go look at Farley. Don't tell me we can't do it. Tell me we don't want to do it. Tell me we're short-sighted. Tell me we're scared. But don't tell me we can't. Because we can, we are, and we must. Thank you, and God bless you. Joe Loda.
He is a tough act to follow, so I'll do my very, very best. Thank you, Governor, and thank you for everything that you're doing. And as the Governor said, and as we all know, New York City is the largest, most complex subway system in the world. And unlike other systems throughout the world, one of our biggest issues and one of our greatest strengths is that we're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every single day of the year. We move 6 million riders every day. We utilize those 840 miles of track, more than any other system in this country. If you took our tracks and laid it one next to the other all the way in a straight line, it'll take you from here on Wall Street all the way to downtown Chicago. That's how long it is. And as one of the oldest systems in the world, the subway system needs constant maintenance. And as the Governor talked about, there are two things that never sufficiently prioritized in the MTA budget: deferred maintenance and preventative maintenance. And as he accurately said, whenever there's been a budget problem, the first things to be cut are deferred maintenance and preventative maintenance. Well, this is what's, combined with the fact of with the growth in all of our riders, this combination of it all has caused significant problems for us. So if you look at the decades of deferred maintenance, plus the increased volume of customers that we have, damage from 5.5 years ago from Hurricane Sandy, 40-plus-year-old subway cars, combined with century-old, he said 60 years, I'm going to go a little further than that, century-old switches and signals, you end up with a problem that we had last spring with one delay after another, resulting in the governor ordering us, through an emergency order, to develop a short-term plan for immediate improvements. I wish all of you were back in the room when they were doing the announcements for the beginning of the Genius Awards to hear the clarion call from the governor, how to fix it, what to do, how quickly to get it done. I heard him loud and clear, and what we were able to do was to put together a program that was pretty uniformly accepted across the board, first dealing with signals and track, then with our car reliability, stations, communications, and management. And quite honestly, they're numbered 1 through 5. They are not numbered in the order of importance. They are all equally important because of all the things that we need to do to make sure that our customers use our system. As the governor mentioned, the number we put on the Subway Action Plan was $836 million. As I mentioned, everyone praised it. John Samuelson, who I understand is here today, has been very, very helpful, as been his successor, Tony Utano, in making and working with all of the members of the Transit Workers Union, changing the way we do business, changing what we do so that we can get the job done. The state immediately pledged its half of the program. The city refused, and the state budget now has changed that dynamic, but we've lost 8 months of progress. The whole point of the plan, the entire point of the plan was that it was going to be a surge. We went through years, decades of underfunding for our maintenance, and I think deferred maintenance, and it had to come to an end. State budget also provided a long-term foundation for the MTA's future. As the governor mentioned, we've got the first phase of congestion pricing, the for-hire vehicle fees with the new central business district below 96th Street. It's going to generate $415 million annually. If Bob Fran, the CFO, is here today from the MTA, go see him. He smiles like I've never seen him smile before because he's seeing this additional money. In addition to that, it's not just the subways that the governor and the legislature dealt with. They also dealt with the bus issues that we have in the city by allowing and giving the city more enforcement cameras to keep the bus lanes clear below 96th Street, a very important thing to get our city moving. But with only half the plan being implemented, we still have had some progress. And it's been quite fascinating what the progress has been. Since June, major signal incidents have decreased 12%. Major track incidents have decreased 37%. Major car incidents have decreased 83%. And major incidents overall have decreased 31%. Now, numbers look nice, numbers are good, but as I told the board at the MTA, I'm not going to be satisfied until the riders, our customers, see it, feel it, understand it, so that the system is back to the system that they, as New Yorkers, all deserve. Minimal number of disruptions, minimal number of delays, and we're on our way to that. By the way, those statistics are available on our website out of a point of transparency. I encourage everyone to go there as frequently as possible to see how it's updated. Now we have the opportunity to put the full plan in place. We're going to double the rate of repairs. When it comes to water and drainage, the system, as you all know, it currently pumps out 13 million gallons of water on a sunny day. We're going to do everything we can to remediate that and fix the cracks all throughout the tunnels. We're going to clean up all 2.2 million feet of the drainage that's in the system. We're going to replace the pipes and the pumps and all of this water. And it may not sound important to you, but let me tell you, the water is critical because it does damage and corrosion to the wooden ties, to the metal tracks, to the electrical equipment. And as we all know, water and electricity do not get along together. With electricity, we've been working very closely with Con Ed to address some serious power problems, installing 396 SAG correctors. If you want to know, SAG is not a union that deals with Broadway and Hollywood. SAG, to me, those are the items that actually regulate the flow of electricity. And let me tell you how important that is. If you see a surge or a diminishment in the quality or the integrity of the electricity, the signals shut down. So I need uniform energy all across the board to make that happen. As well as we're now connecting each and every one of our stations. We're having connectors so that generators can be put in. In the event that there is a significant power problem citywide, we're going to do everything we can to get the subway system back up and running by having this connectivity. Car repairs. We're increasing, and we will be increasing the size of our workforce so that we can operate our yards 24/7, 365, every single day of the week, really with a full complement of service, with 3 shifts all the way around the day. We're going to do that, and we're going to make sure that all of our cars are overhauled as frequently as they possibly can. When it comes to tracks and station cleaning, we've talked about this. We removed trash and debris from the system. We've already removed 3,000 tons of garbage. We're going to increase the frequency, and we've started already now with the surge, with the additional money. We're going to increase the frequency of station cleaning more. We're going to hire the people necessary to double the painting crews, to triple our tile cleaning, and to also create a stair repair program. Very critical to what we need to do to be successful. And also, we started with the plan something called the CAT teams, or the Combined Action Teams. What they do is they're positioned all throughout the city so that if there is a problem, they can get there quickly and they can fix it. That has been very important. We have seen a significant reduction in the amount of downtime by placing them strategically all throughout the system, and we're going to expand that. Regarding signals, we've already repaired 1,000 signals, and we're going to double that. Major issue is going to be volume is up, and the signals, as the governor said, completely has to change. The key to our capacity challenge is resignaling the entire system. And Governor, we heard you on the 8 years. Andy, good luck. It's not going to take the 20 years. The Genius Challenge brought us some interesting ideas. We were already working on wideband as an option, and as the governor said, we're in the proof of concept stage, and we are seeing some very good and interesting results. So, it's all going to cost a lot of money. It's a significant amount of money, and for me, the thing to look at is that we're embarking right now on the new capital program. New capital program will start in 2020. The current capital program is completely utilized. Every single penny is going to be used. So we're going to need another plan at a period of time when I know people don't always like when I say this, but New York City actually does own the subway system. They've leased it to us, and we operate it. But the reality is there's a commitment. It's the law. They own it, and they should be paying their fair share when it comes to the capital program, especially in a period of time when New York City has an $8 billion surplus and the state of New York has a $4 billion deficit. The time has come for the city to pay its fair share. Now, let me wrap up real quickly by talking about why it's a new era at the MTA. Look, we have shown over the last 8 months now that we can change the way the MTA operates. The governor has told us we have to change the way we do it. We are changing how we're doing it. I want everybody to understand that what we've been able to do over the last 8 months with getting the system into a better state of reliability, not fully there, we will get there, but you're going to have to hold us accountable. We know what we need to do. I want to be held accountable. We will get this job done. And we need to make these investments in the future, as the governor talked about, how important the MTA is to everything in New York. The number of workers every day, the number of students to and from school, people just traveling even on the weekends, and the tourist industry that is so critical to our economy. It all relies on the New York City subway system. So, bottom line on the whole thing is, I said it before, we are changing, we have changed, and we are going to continue to change. Hold me responsible, hold the new management team at the MTA responsible. We will get the job done. Thank you.
So we're running a little late, so I'm going to take a chairman's prerogative, ask one question, and then we'll send you all home. So, Governor, Gateway. seem to have done a little better than we thought on the federal budget. What's it going to take to get done, and are you optimistic?
I have to be an optimist, otherwise I couldn't do the job that I do. If you were a realist, I would have slit my wrists a long time ago. We're talking about infrastructure. Airports are in good shape. The subway, we can make progress. Gateway is probably the most important infrastructure connection on the eastern seaboard. Gateway, the tunnels that come from New Jersey to New York, that's how the Amtrak and the trains go get to the Northeast. They are in very bad shape. They've been in bad shape for years. They were damaged under Hurricane Sandy. We had made an agreement with the Obama administration where New Jersey, New York would chip in with the federal government. We, as far as I'm concerned, penned that deal, Governor Christie, myself, and the Obama administration. This federal government has unraveled that transaction. They included 500 something for planning in the budget. That's nothing. This is Russian roulette. Those tunnels could go bad, any time. From the moment you say go, you have to remember this is probably an environmental impact statement that's going to take 10 years if it takes a day. So it's all politics, and I think the president is holding out for something that he wants, maybe a security defense item. He knows the senior senator from New York, Senator Schumer, wants and needs the gateway. And I think they're playing, it's politics between the two of them. But it's the last place you should be playing politics, This is literally a vital transportation infrastructure need. And this was so irresponsible to play politics with this issue.
Governor, Chairman Loda, thank you so much. We're grateful.
Thank you.